buttoned that up.
I'm very relaxed, as you can tell. I've been stretching. Probably just if we're going to start now, let's kick it off. So Keith Banks, is that your real name, or are you currently undercover now, mate? That's the question.
No, no, it's been a long time since then, mate. No, that's my real name.
Yeah, mate. So we spoke to a couple of lads prior to the show, and you're actually a little bit of a legend in the army community as well. People have heard of Keith Banks before, mate. So there you go.
Is that right? Yep. Oh, that's nice to know, mate, but a bit embarrassing. Oh, that's very cool. Any areas in particular? Or should I say this, was I known for my drinking prowess?
Mate, I think that's got to have to be half of it. Because everyone in the army pre what smartphones were, books, and so everyone reads every book known to man and every podcast after that. So it's picking up.
Yeah, cool. No, that's cool.
So you were undercover copper in the glory days of this, or the Wild West in the 70s, 80s.
The 80s, mate. I started undercover in March 1980 when yeah, I was a baby, mate. I volunteered for it when I think I'd not even turned 22. So March 1980, yeah, I was a couple of months shy of 22, and I just volunteered for it because as cliche as it sounds, you know, I wanted to save the world. I wanted to be a super cop. I thought that was the way to do something really noble, you know, fight the drug trade and all of that stuff that people should have ideals about. Didn't realize what it was all about, and I didn't realize how much then it would change me within a couple of years. And more importantly, a lot of my mates were fucked up as a result.
I read in there that you guys were chosen because you didn't look anything like cops.
Yeah, it was a pretty severe selection process, really. If you didn't look like a cop, you're in. And in those days, you know, cops were like 6 foot plus, and I'll be as nice as I can. Not a lot of them had a great deal of education, so you know, if you didn't fit the mold and you volunteered for UC work, then as long as they realised that you weren't an out and out raving lunatic, you know, you were probably in. That came later.
Because they had the same philosophy for the I could be talking absolute shit, but when they started Z Force and the special forces for Vietnam, you couldn't be over a certain height. You had to look like a run of the mill average sort of guy. Otherwise, they're like, no, you don't. We can't put you in sort of different roles.
Well, I mean, when I did some work, in the tactical field later in my career, and I went to Swanbourne and did a CT instructor's course over there, and I was struck by the fact that most of the guys in the regiment were probably my size or shorter, and I'm lucky to top out at about 174 centimeters. And you know, it makes sense when you're going through a toilet window with all your gear on that you don't want to be a Ben Robert Smith, you know, or an Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know how the hell he got through it, but and it was the same, you know, cops. I got to say in the 80s. And I've probably been a bit scathing in my book and my next book about just attitudinally and the way they dressed. You could pick a cop 500 meters away. You know, they had the classic short back and sides, the brown pants with a green shirt, you know, or the short sleeve white shirt with a bad tie. And I, you know, from the time I wanted to be a cop, I didn't want to look anything like a cop. And one of the best compliments I've gotten all through the years, even now, is, geez, you don't strike me as being a cop. Fabulous, thank you very much. So I, you know, being an undercover cop was getting away from all of that discipline and, you know, 8-hour-a-day shifts and being told when to take your meal break. And even as a detective, you know, there are certain rules and regulations. So for us to be involved in something there was nothing. There were no rules. You just pretty much did what you liked, you know, within reason, I suppose. But then a few of the boys lost the sight of that as well. But it was just such an adventurous world to be in after 2 years in the police academy, where it was really, you guys would get that, you know, it's basic training. I think your basic training is what, 6 months maybe?
Yeah.
Don't know what it is these days. We were there for 2 years, yeah, getting screamed at and marching and, you know, carrying bloody 303s above your head cleaning tiles with toothbrushes. So imagine that shit for 2 years. So when we came out and then worked in uniform, that was a release, thank God. But then the whole undercover world was just fuck, wow, the world's your oyster.
So what happened?
Um,
You get selected for undercover when you're going through the
mm,
academy, or do you have to go and do the beats?
no,
No.
no, there was no course, mate. This is how Wild West it was. Some guys got picked at the academy because there was a friend of mine who was, I think he was Indian or Sri Lankan, because there weren't any Sri Lankans in the cops. Then they grabbed him and put him into undercover almost as soon as he was sworn in. Um, and others of us volunteered. Years later, actually, a friend of mine who was the first Vietnamese cop in Queensland, if not Australia, he came over with his family as refugees when Vietnam fell. His dad had been an officer in the South Vietnamese Air Force, so they had, of course, get out before the communists grabbed him. He came over as a kid, grew up in Darra, where a lot of Vietnamese people settled and resettled, and joined the cops, and they grabbed him pretty much out of the academy. He may have had 3 months service in uniform, and they just put him into covert where he stayed for 15 years. And that's, another story that, yeah, I was actually, I'm jumping around a bit, I know, but as a detective later in my service, I was actually running an operation he was involved in. So, you actually, later we had people supervising undercovers, and he almost got killed, and we had to drag him out. But he didn't really have a choice because it's almost like grooming. They get a young, naive bloke or girl, and just grab them and say you're going to be special to us, so we'll get you into this special area, and then unfortunately, when their use was over, they were just kicked to the curb. So I volunteered for it, no training. I literally went in. I think I might have taken a couple of weeks off to start to grow my hair a bit, and maybe grow a beard, because again, cops weren't allowed to grow beards in those days. I couldn't have long hair. Certainly couldn't have an earring. So I think I went and got my ear pierced or something, and and went right into it. Now I've got to make the point, guys, that in those days I didn't drink. I did martial arts 4 or 5 days a week. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I'd never touched drugs. I was, straight down the line. And within 3 months of starting this up, I was a pot smoking, binge drinking, fucking raving lunatic. It was just, it just went boom. Um, but so this, I think, first day walked in, they gave me a little pistol, a little 25 cal Browning, I think it was, and some false number plates for my car because we used our own cars, and put me with a UC or an undercover guy that had been there for maybe 2 years. Went along on a couple of buys with him, and I just shut up and listened and soaked it up and learned. And these days there's an incredibly intense training course, selection process, psychological testing, and all that stuff. But this is back in the old days. Could argue it was better. Could argue it was worse. I
Yeah,
don't know.
it'd probably be better for you guys to get into your character, having less management, less stuff sort of breathing down your neck. You can really get into it. But that's what I'm interested
Yeah,
with management and like reporting and stuff like that. How did that work
yeah.
back then?
Well, that's a good question. We were supposed to report directly to a certain detective or team of detectives, but it's a combination, mate. Either they didn't give a rat's ass where we were, or they didn't really know how to manage us anyway. So you'd basically, your briefing would be, for instance, if my first job out of Brisbane, here's some reports on potential drug dealers, and you and your mate jump in your car, bugger off up there, and give us a call when you got something. So we'd actually go generally one out actually, and you just go like no mobile phones, they hadn't been thought of, no pages. So you basically find a public phone box, make sure no one's around, and ring the office once a week, and go, I'm still here. Anybody care? Hello, anyone
So
me?
there was no specific handler, no like secret dead drops in the middle of the night. It was just
No, well, dead drops. Not no, not as a rule. There was some detectives who actually did try to look after us, and they did try to maintain contact. But you basically, if I was out scoring drugs, so if every set of drugs I'd buy, I'd voucher. I'd put in an envelope. I'd write notes about the conversation. I'd seal it up. I'd sign it. Do all that sort of stuff, and hide it in the flat that I was living in, or the house I was living in. Sometimes under the house, sometimes under a drawer, sometimes literally in the kitchen cupboard. And when I got enough, I'd ring someone, and they'd send someone up from Brisbane I'd formally hand over the evidence maybe at a dead drop at night. Formally hand it over, do the running sheets and shit, and then they'd piss off, and I'd be back into it the next day, going, "Hey, here I am again." Um, Not all bad though. I've got to make the point. I've written in the book about the casualties of it, but I hope I've also gotten the fact out that it was a pretty fucking adventurous life for a young bloke. You know, oh, it was. You know, um, didn't carry a badge. On the very rare occasions I did, it was well hidden under a spare tire in my car or something.
So, because so what happens?
And no
I
rules
mean, what happened if you got caught with
by who?
by the cops? I suppose at first, like,
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. You'd learn really quickly because I got belted by two interstate detectives over the border in Tweed Heads. I had I don't know, I might have had a half an ounce of heroin, I had a shitload of pot, I had, all these drugs that I'd bought, and I was over the border waiting to meet my contact, who'd driven down from Brisbane that day. I'll meet you there, I'll pick up the gear, and you'll be on your way. And I had we had access to every gun we wanted. Basically, we went to the firearms section and looked through all the guns that had been seized, and just picked out things that didn't look like cops' guns. So I'd turn them over every 2 months because I was a bit crazy. And I had a 357 Magnum sitting in the boot of the car, which wasn't a cop gun in those days. So these two New South Wales detectives turned up, got me out of the car. It looked like a bag of shit, I guess. I had shoulder length hair and 5-day growth and whatever. And I thought, fair enough, they're going to, get my name and my detail. I had false ID, all good to go. And one of them said, open the boot of the car, and I thought, oh no, I'm fucked. So, so I just said, look, guys, got to tell you, I'm in the drug squad. I'm undercover. I'm waiting to meet my handler. And then it turned bad because I didn't realise these two blokes were probably not as honest as most should have been. And I think the impression they got was I was in their territory. So they gave me a bit of a touch up to try and find out who I was working on and what I was doing. So, fortunately, after about 5 minutes of getting smacked around the head, and you just learn to cover up and go, fuck. I just said, look, you pair of cunts, if you, so we have a language warning on this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely, mate.
Clear, clear
From episode 1, mate.
I just said, you want to hang around for 5 minutes, you'll see exactly who I'm working on, because my boss or my handler or whatever I called him was going to be here in a minute. And they just, got in their car and drove off. But Queensland was a pretty rough place in the 80s. Again, you've got to paint the picture of not all cops. Majority of cops I work with are honest, good people. Yep. But they had an attitude about people that didn't fit in, particularly, someone who looked like a grub or a drug dealer. If you weren't careful, you'd end up on the wrong end of a backhand or or whatever. And that was the way it was. So you just basically learn to try to not put your head above the radar, I suppose. If I had been caught, it would depend. It would clearly depend on the circumstance. Sometimes I'd just tough it out. If I didn't have any drugs on me, I didn't have a gun on me, I could just tough it out, use my false ID, and it'd be fine. Just depended. A couple of my mates were caught. A couple of my mates were raided in various jobs. A mate of mine he picked up a young lady, and he was in bed with her the next morning when the local drug squad on the Gold Coast kicked his door down, not knowing who he was. So that was a bit untidy because he had a gun beside his bed, and yeah.
And then, is there an awkward conversation, or you got to pull your badge out and be like, bro?
Well, there's no badge, mate. So you just go, I need to talk to you alone, mate, I'm in the drug squad. Bullshit. Whack. No, really, I am. So, and I look back on it now, and some of the things are still funny. Again, I don't know how much of the book you read or not, but I did a job in Townsville with a mate, and drove up there. Car had a shock absorber blowout. Put it in the local mechanic to get it repaired. And I thought I'd cleaned the gun out. I had a shotty. I had a couple of pistols. Because everybody had a gun then. Everybody had one. You could walk into any sports store or even Kmart. Yeah, shit, you're not Kmart, and go and buy a 223 Mini 14 Ruger.
From
no
Kmart?
ID, no nothings. Yeah, from Kmart. So everybody had a gun. So we were armed to the teeth. Put it into the mechanic. Thought I'd cleaned it out, but I bloody forgot a box of ammo, that 38 revolver ammo, hollow points that I'd had hidden in the car. So this guy called the coppers. Coppers came looking for. I picked the car up all nicely and innocently. I had the big beard and the long hair, and stand there minding my own business, having a beer on the balcony, and I said to my mate, "Jeez, there's three cop cars outside, detectives. Must be something on." I went, "Fuck, must be serious. They've got guns in their hands. Jesus Christ, they're coming up here." So, so pounding at the door, open the door, and bang! I literally had a 38 put in my mouth and rammed against the wall, as you would. Fair enough. They thought they were bad guys, and then just kept my mouth shut. And this guy, who later became a very good friend of mine, pulled his 30 out, because the first thing I thought was, "Fuck, I hope his weapon handling skills are up to scratch. This isn't good." And oops, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it gave me a bit of a belting, and because I'd said, "Yeah, if you open the car up downstairs, there's going to be guns in there." Oh, I shouldn't have said that. That's a rookie error. So he gave me another couple of rips and whatever, and then my mate said, "Enough, enough, enough. I've got to talk to her in the drug squad." So to this day, and this guy Ferret was a Vietnam veteran. He was an infantry machine gunner in an infantry company in Vietnam. Good bloke. And to this day, he still says, "Geez, Banksy, he didn't give up. He didn't say anything. I was giving it to him, and he just covered up." And thanks, mate. Yeah, I appreciate that. So, yeah, funny days.
So how long would you work a case as an undercover, or how long were you actually undercover in total?
Mate, all up, the first time almost 2 years. Then I went back and did another couple of jobs after that. When I was a little older, I got press gang back into it because apparently I was regarded as a pretty good operator. So I'd say all up maybe 3 years for each job. Completely depends on how far you get up the chain. So I worked one out on the Gold Coast and predominantly bought heroin. So I got as far up the chain as the purity of the heroin was 82% from memory, or 83%. And purity means that it's almost near the importer, because all through the drug supply chain, people step on it, or they add things to it, laxative, baby powder, whatever. And sorry, baby milk, not baby powder. Oh, sometimes baby powder. And they increase the volume or the weight of it, so the profit margins go through the roof. So I think that one took me maybe 5 months to get to that stage. Completely all depends.
Because this would change your personality. No, sorry, that's probably a leading question.
Yeah,
Did you
yeah.
lose?
No, true though.
You were young when you got into the squad, so your personality's still developing. As dudes, I don't think we mature out till we're like 35. If you ask my missus, it's like, I still haven't. But
Took the words right out of my mouth, mate. Yeah, look, it did. I came through it relatively well. I had a mate who developed a heroin habit, became an armed robber because they just kicked him to the curb. Terrible, horrible story. Had another couple of mates who went to jail, who just got so fixated on the drug life that the lines got really blurry for them. But what it did to me was it changed my personality, all right. But I went into Undercover with a whole black and white view of the world. You were either a good bloke or you're an asshole. Yeah. You were a good bloke if you were a copper or you were a citizen that didn't do anything wrong. You're an asshole if you had a joint, and worse. So I came out of that with a whole realization about the world is not as it seems. And I've said this to a number of people over the years, even before I started writing about it. I said, I met a lot of drug dealers who actually weren't bad people.
yeah, absolutely.
They were selling drugs, which is horrible, but heroin particularly, but they weren't bad blokes. They were loyal to their partners. They were family men. I met a lot of coppers who weren't good blokes, and corrupt coppers and blokes who were screwing everything that moved. And hey, that's their call, not mine. But you know what I mean? There's this whole paradox in the world. So things to me became shades of grey, not black and white anymore. So on that note, it actually made me a more rounded person, not a mature one, but a more rounded one. Because I came out, that there's a great line in a song called Copperhead Road by Steve Earle. I came home with a brand new plan. Every time I hear that, I go, yeah, that's exactly what I was like. I came out with a whole new attitude to life. And it gave me an ability as a junior detective that I sort of went down that road to be able to talk to people on their level and not treat them like pricks. And that's part and parcel of interrogation.
And I think that's it. It's the grey area between. You hear stories about good guys just doing stuff as a source of income to get out. Like they make the decision. I suppose it's like the Breaking Bad. If you want to dumb it down or oversimplify it, it's good
Yeah.
guys in desperation doing bad things.
Yep. Or they haven't got, there's no education, mate. They may come from a shit area, shit environment. That's not an excuse because I did as well. But I get it, I get it that you don't necessarily have to be an evil person to be a drug dealer. Sometimes life just happens, and that's a choice they made. But there were blokes, particularly blokes, in that world that I quite liked having a beer with, and I actually felt more comfortable with them than I did when I had a bit of R&R and I was hanging around with some coppers again. I actually felt more comfortable in that world. Whether that's a psychological reliance on, hey, listen to me, sound like I know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Whether that's a psychological reliance on that world of, I don't know, the rush of adventure and the fear and the adrenaline. And you guys would probably relate to that because a lot of you guys probably miss where you were overseas when you came back home, and it's similar. It was similar for me. I actually couldn't wait to get back into that lifestyle because I knew who I was, even though I was living a fake life. Sounds bizarre, but a lot of undercovers I've spoken to felt that way as well. You know,
It'd have to be. It'd have
different
to play
worlds.
on you with like your effect learning to lie and manipulate and or is that do you have to change your whole persona and your whole identity? Is it you live a lie or you just
Um,
become somebody else?
yeah, that's a good question, Max. My mate Larry, who there was a guy who was a couple of years older than I was that went into it around the same time as I did. He called it NIDA on steroids. So the National Institute of Dramatic Art on steroids. He said because if you get a bad review as an actor, it might hurt your feelings. You get a bad review as a UC, you get your fucking head belted in with a baseball bat. So, so, but that was part of the buzz as well. Absolutely learning to sit and look at someone straight in the eye and lie to them, completely lie to them. Um, and my wife sometimes says it's like I've got a master's degree in lying to people. Maybe I have. Um, but it was just such a buzz as well, and you just learn to lie. But in the back of your mind, in that little part that sort of kicks around the lizard brain, I suppose, you had to remember who you were, and you were one of the good guys, not one of the bad guys. But the whole buzz was that you could be a bad guy. You could act like one, you could talk like one, you could carry a gun like one, you could use threats of violence, sometimes violence, like one, but at the same time having that understanding that you weren't one. Really, really unique
From
experience.
from that, and like lying straight to people's faces, have you ever been either busted and and found out,
Mm.
or been really close to that? And if so, like what was it? What was that situation like?
Yeah, yeah, great. Again, good question, mate. Yes, the answer is yes. Um, the first undercover job I did, I didn't really have that confidence, and my constant feedback from my mates was, "You're too fucking nice, you know, just be a cunt." And because I'd been a nice bloke, it was hard to do. And so the first job I was on, I was buying shit. I was buying hash, I was buying speed, lots of dope, some acid, whatever, from this guy, and I would meet him at his house or in certain pubs and whatever. And one night he said, "I'll come and have a drink with me at this place called the Royal Exchange Hotel in Brisbane, which is now a really cool pub. Back then, the only people that went there were bikies, crooks, drug dealers, people who wanted to score. It was just you weren't there for any other reason, or you were bloody naive. So I walked in there one night. It's a winter night. I remember it vividly. Big long table, and this bloke sitting in the center of the table. The place is packed. There's about half a dozen patched bikie gang members in one corner. There's some other obvious dealers. There's some hard-bitten painters and dockers. Just a bloodbath of a pub. And I had my little 25 caliber pistol with me, just down in some Ugg boots, believe it or not. And classy guy that I was. And
Gee, you really
and I
slipped
had
off the
I had it
wagon
sort of.
quick, mate.
Oh, did
Trying to
I
have an
ever?
Ugg boot.
Hey, hey, I went from ironing my jeans and ironing my t-shirts to wearing Ugg boots and fucking shirts that were 4 days, same shirt 4 days in a row. And I walked in and I went, "Hey, how you going?" And you get a sense when something's not right. And I thought, yeah, this vibe isn't good. And I sat down and there's silence and this massive, massive bloody noise. This table is silent. There's this guy and maybe, I think, two of his mates on either side. Oh, sorry, two on his side, two of them sitting beside me. So I'm just thinking, yeah, this isn't good at all. I said, so what's going on? And he just looked at me and said, I think you're a narc. Narc being undercover cop. And of course I did the, what do you mean? Bullshit, bloody blah. And he said, I've checked your number plates. They're fucking false number plates. And that's when my blood ran cold and I thought, oh, Jesus. Firstly, how could he do that? Secondly, no one's prepared me for this shit. I've got no idea what to do. So, and I couldn't get to my gun in a pink fit, you know, because I'd bloody, I think I'd masking taped it around my ankle or something. And so I'm thinking, fuck. So all I did was I just stood up and screamed at him and said, you're a fucking dog. How the fuck can you check my number plates, you fucking cunt? You working for the feds, you fucking maggot, blah, blah, blah. All the time, the adrenaline and the fear is going, oh, Jesus. And I was, you know, I was training in martial arts a lot, and I still do. And I was just measuring how far I could reach across just to elbow strike him in the nose, at least take him out. And then he's just gone, hey, calm down, shh, shh, shh. Because the last thing you want to be accused of in a bloodbath pub is being an informer. So on that note, I've, you know, pushed my chair back, pushed one of these guys out of the way, and bear in mind, boys, I was wringing wet about shit. I would have been lucky to top 70 kilos, and I've just done the whole get the fuck out of my way, you fucking rah rah rah, and out I go. And got to the car, and I remember having to hold my hand because my hands are shaking so much to try and put the key in the door to get my car and go and leave. And I was shitting myself. So went home, you know, because we didn't have safe houses in those days, lived in our own places. So I did a lot of anti-surveillance to make sure I wasn't being followed, and got home, couldn't sleep, you know, stressed out, thinking, fuck. And I spoke to one of my other undercovers the next morning, and he said, right, you've done the right thing. All you got to do, mate, is be right on the front foot. So I rang this guy from a phone booth and then threatened to come around with my mate and break his legs and, you know, and blah, blah, blah. And he was apologetic and just went, oh, sorry. And I said, so how the fuck do you check my number plate? He'd paid off someone in the main roads department to run a check, because back in those days, everyone was for sale, you know. So that's my favourite story about getting busted. But there were others, you know. People would say, I think you're a narc, yeah. But as soon as you produce that magic roll of cash, all of their doubts dissolved. So, you know. It's just like anything. The more you practice, the better you got.
It's a classic case of deny, counter accuse.
Absolutely. So there's four steps to this. Never admit anything, deny everything, demand proof, and make counter allegations.
Yeah, that's...
Feel free to use it.
We'll clip that out for all the boys that are coming home from the pub late, you know.
That's right. I can run a whole tutorial on that.
New program for the app.
I can't believe at that age with and the Wild West, and I sort of want to get into it, but I mean PTSD and traumatic, they were fairly benign or unknown conditions, right?
Yeah, unknown. Yeah,
and so you know, you've been doing this for a while. When did you notice yourself that something isn't quite right? And was it an external force, or was it yourself going, fuck, this isn't right?
Mate, I came through Undercover pretty much unscathed, but I needed a rush, so I volunteered for special weapons, so tactical work, tactical operations, which was part-time in those days. We became full-time, blah, blah, blah. Loved it, cracked through a lot of hot doors, you know. The SASR came over and trained us every year at Canungra Land Warfare Centre, part of the National Terrorist Plant. Loved it. Rappelled out of choppers, you know, and as you know, going through a hot door is always scary. If you're not scared, you're an idiot. But it all changed for me in 1987. We went through a door when we were chasing, or we were executing a warrant on the #1 most wanted armed robber in Queensland, and probably the #2 most wanted in Australia, violent prick, who'd you know, shot a security guard in the back for no reason, delighted in shooting. I think he'd killed someone else in Sydney. Just a violent bastard. Ex-army, lived on the land, you know, knew his weaponry and so on. We'd put together a plan to raid the house. The plan had been knocked back by someone in headquarters, someone in force command, because it utilised distraction grenades and tear gas. And in those days, they didn't want to upset the public, because at that time, the Fitzgerald inquiry into corruption was going on. So So our deliberate option was, was stymied by not utilizing everything that I knew should be utilized. So cut a long story short again. Went into the house. This guy had changed the direction the doors swung. So on an inwards cracking door, he'd made them turn outwards to delay us by a couple of seconds. He'd built a trapdoor in his bedroom, had a scanner, although we were using voice protection, so he couldn't hear us. But anyway, opened up on us, and it was a shit fight. One of my guys died that morning in hospital. He was shot 5 times. Our vests were level 2, so they were only designed for shotties and pistols. Even a 22 rifle would have gone through them. Another one of my mates was shot in the lower stomach. Fortunately, survived, but he ended up with a round about literally a millimetre from his spine, and I thought he was dead. And 2 of us went in and took the guy out. No problem. Never lost a second sleep over taking this guy out. But I reckon within 2 weeks, something had gone wrong with me. I didn't know what it was. We didn't know what PTSD was. The support was non-existent. There was no psychological counselling. There was nothing. That day we were interviewed by the homicide squad, the 2 of us, and the others who were there who didn't fire shots, of course, but everyone was interviewed. After it was done, they took us upstairs to the police club to get us on the gas. It's all people knew how to do, and that's fine. But then it just started to change. I just, over the next, probably took me 25 years to get better, to get to the stage I am now. I had survivor guilt for a long time because I was the one who chose the order of march. Yeah. And even though it wasn't my fault, my mind and my emotional state wouldn't let me believe that it wasn't my fault. So, I was in a dark place for a long time. And I think it was maybe 4 or 5 weeks after this, we were given information that the 2 of us who'd shot the crook had a contract on our heads from some crims in Sydney who were friends of his. So they gave us permission to carry our 9mm off duty, which was unheard of. But that was it. There was no protection. There was nothing. So I carried this thing with me like a security blanket, as you'd probably expect. But I reckon 4 or 5 weeks we were told that. Then maybe a couple of weeks after that, and I was drinking every night. And I like to drink, but I didn't drink every night before this. I was on the gas every night just to sleep. Put it in my mouth. I was home one night alone, racked up around, put it in my mouth, and I just thought, if I just squeeze the trigger, all this shit will go away, and then I'll know what my mates know. Just a very strange, dark place to be in. And the only reason I didn't squeeze the trigger was I was living with my girlfriend then, and I'd been to a suicide a couple of years before, where this guy had killed himself with a 303 and taken literally the top of his head off, and all the brain spatter and the blood and so on all over the wall. And in that one moment, I thought, shit, if I do this, she's going to come home and find that, and that'll devastate her. Not that I was worried about dying, because it just didn't even factor, but the fact that she'd find it and that would devastate her. So in that moment of 1 second of clarity, took it out and went, fuck, dropped the mag, ejected the round, stripped it down, hid the slide in one part of the house, the frame in another, and went to bed. And then woke up the next morning and thought, things aren't quite right here. But I didn't realize that it wasn't just me. I just thought it was me. I just thought I was losing my mind.
And did you, from that point with treatment pathways and stuff, did you put your hand up back then, or was that just wore it?
Wasn't anything available then, mate. There was no, and the culture was that you didn't do that. I was worried because I wanted blood after Peter had been killed. I wanted blood. I wanted to take out as many crooks as I could, and that dark side really started to take over because I'm a nice bloke, and even if I do say so myself, but I could actually feel that whole change and shift in identity, and I knew on one level that if I put my hand up, they'd take me out of the tactical group, and that meant I didn't have the chance to take anybody out. So, I just internalized it all, self-medicated, cried by myself, exercised like a demon, drank like a lunatic. Exercise like a demon, drink like a lunatic, and every chance I got, I didn't take leave. Every chance I got, I went on every job I could with the intention of squeezing the trigger again. And I realized after a couple of years that a couple of years for this, that that I was really in danger of that dark side taking over who I was. So I just went to my boss and said, I got to get out. But that was probably prompted by the fact that they transferred someone into the group who was sent there to calm us down, which wasn't a bad thing because I wasn't the only one. We shot more people in the next 2 years after Peter was killed than we ever had before, because we just went, fuck this. We're not going to give anybody a chance. All legal shootings, all good shootings, but none of the drop your gun, drop your gun, drop your gun like police used to. So he was sent there to really, try and get us to pull our heads in, I guess, and I didn't like that at all. I took great offence to that. So, and that's when I realised I was just changing into a bit wrong. I was changing into a homicidal lunatic. So then I volunteered to go back into go to criminal intelligence, back into the covert world. But I had all that stuff still running around my head for a long time.
Because I've been talking to boys about this, and some of our experiences, and even my experiences overseas. We talk about PTSD, and then we talk about moral injuries. And it was the will or the want to kill someone else. And it was, they were, like I said, they were legal killings overseas. They weren't war crimes. They weren't, but it was the want to kill.
Totally
understand. Want to kill this dude, and then trying to justify it and live with that and go, well, I wasn't raised like this, but why do I want to do this? And that's the turmoil that's been going through, a lot of boys overseas, I suppose, and that have come back. And it's just really interesting that the survivor guilt as well, but this stuff piled on. Is that something that you went through?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. It's, I used to struggle internally with the fact that that's not how I was raised. That's not why I wanted to be a cop. But here I was in a world where I was absolutely looking for the opportunity. So I understand what those guys, I understand what they're thinking and saying, and it probably reinforces with me that the PTSD journey is not isolated to an occupation. So it's not isolated to a theatre of war versus a theatre of policing. It's basically the same thing that really hits that emotion and your mind. And I totally understand it, mate. And on that subject, it makes me fucking furious about the media coverage about the allegations that have been made, as if they're all completely proven and truthful. It really burns me. And I've probably lost a couple of friends over it because I get quite annoyed, to put it bluntly, to understate it. I get pretty pissed off about it, because that has an effect on everybody. It's like the corruption inquiry that we went through. We were all tarred with the same brush. Yeah, even though no stats, let's make them up. 98.9% of coppers are straight, good, honest, dedicated people, but we're all tarred with the same brush, And if there's been something that's happened in a theatre of war, everybody gets tarred with the same brush. And the other fact is, as I just said, nothing's been tested in a court of law. Shut the fuck up.
That is the big one.
Would
Shut
be my,
the fuck up and let's go through the system that we have in Australia.
Yeah. Yeah, give some people some natural justice, for God's sake. But anyway, sorry, I'll just climb back off my soapbox there.
That's 100%, because it's such a big thing at the moment with all the boys getting done over.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not good for their mental health or emotional.
I think culturally
the
impacts have been fucking huge throughout the ADF. I think it's taken a massive hit with people's motivation levels or even patriotism. It's people, because as you said, everyone's been painted with the same brush, so it's not great.
Mate, and a statement, and sorry to interrupt, Keegan, but, for the chief to say, I'm going to take away the meritorious unit citation from everybody, just appalling.
It's fair enough when someone needs punishment, but not an entire regiment.
That's right. It's not like when you're going through basic training where you give everyone push-ups because someone's late. I get that, that's fine, but this is just an extreme reaction to probably try to appease public opinion. Who the hell knows? Anyway.
And how do you do that? So as a cop, or as someone in the army, if you look at it, and maybe there's some similarities, but as a cop, if you're going through a corruption trial and they're like, well, they fucking think we're all corrupt anyway. Like, you hold yourself to standards as a police officer. I would imagine that you're supposed to be, you uphold justice or law and order and all these things. and that's one of the pillars that I would imagine people hold themselves to. And then they say, well, all the coppers are corrupt. You're like, well, fuck. If they all think I'm corrupt, well, might as fucking well be like, and the same as the army,
Mate,
you know.
yeah. I don't know, see, because it comes back to your moral compass. What it did for us when we had all of that media attention on us saying, oh, you're all corrupt, and we had we had a police commissioner a guy promoted to commissioner level from Victoria, who spent all of his service in an office, who had all this attitude, and he went to his first induction parade at the academy and told all the inductees they were the new force and we're all. He used a Star Wars analogy, which was something like you're the Jedi Knights and the other police are the Dark Forces and some fucking bullshit, and they were told that anybody above the rank of senior constable, which was I think about 5-7 years service or something, we were all corrupt because if we hadn't partaken in it, we knew about it and hid it. So what that did was that really united us. Yeah, the majority of coppers went, well, fuck them. They can think what they like, but we're still here to lock up bad guys and protect people from the bad guys. So there's still a lot of bitterness now, even all these years later. I want a closed Facebook group that we have for just cops to openly talk about PTSD, depression, anxiety, and so on, and to vent. And here's a shameless marketing ploy. I put the cover of my next book up and said it's going to be released, guys and girls, bloody blah. And then I had this whole thread of people going, fantastic, mate. I hope you talk about that fucking inquiry and the bullshit we went through, and even all these years later. But it just united us. So that's probably the silver lining that happened out of that. And I hope the same happens with the ADF, where you just go, well, fuck them, we're good guys.
Coming back a bit to your Valor Award for that day, with your like sort of tactical response group sort of stuff. How did you go about accepting that? Because I know obviously that was a bad day for you, and not a good day. But then they're obviously trying to pin an award on your chest for you doing what you did.
It's on. I'm stumbling and stammering only because it's only people who actually get decorated who understand how difficult it is to accept one. It was really bittersweet. It was great that we were recognised, but fucking sad that Pete wasn't there. And I would have much rather handed every medal I've got back to have my mate, standing beside me to have a beer. Because I got two Valor Award medals on the same day. One was for that, one was for something else I'd done. And the other thing that I was decorated for was where I actually went somewhere with the intention of killing a guy and then ended up sitting with him and saving his life. So that's the bittersweet thing as well. I was really proud to be acknowledged for the second one, but the first one, it was tough. But I accepted it because it was important for his memory, and it was important for any future kids that I had, because I didn't have kids at that stage. And I struggled with it, and I weighed it all up and thought, no, I'm proud of it now, but it took me 15 years to put my citations on the wall. That they just sat somewhere. I didn't feel comfortable because it was like boasting or bragging or that sort of stuff. It's quite interesting in hindsight, what you go. It still makes me uncomfortable now, as you can see. So
with your second, do you want to run us through your second Valor Award?
Yeah, mate. I was gone from intelligence back to the major crime squad then, and it's a bit of a long story. I'll give you the short brief. I was actually running an undercover guy. I went to see him it was a Saturday, with the intention of do the running sheets, get the evidence, make sure he's all cool, and we're in a covert car, not like a normal CIB unmarked car, but a very covert one. And we went, right, it's 10 to 3, we're knocking off at 4, we'll cruise through Queen Street, pervert the girls, and come back to headquarters, which is quite a good way to spend a Saturday afternoon. And there was any unit call that a guy had fired shots in the centre of the city in this the MLC building, which was a pretty major landmark in Brisbane in those days. I was always armed. So, and just what, you know, and any cop worth their salt will always go to a shots fired call. And wasn't too long after the Hoddle Street massacre. You were pretty young when that happened, I think, but the guy killed all these people in Melbourne. There was a Queen Street massacre in Melbourne. A guy stormed through a building and shot, I don't know, 11 or 12 people or something. So again, everybody had a gun then. So my immediate thought was, shit, you know, this guy's roaming through a building, firing shots, got to get in there. So anyway, turned up, no cordon, no inner cordon, and a lot of cops weren't trained then, and a lot of cops don't really, not their fault, but if they haven't got the training, they don't react quickly in emergency situations. So I jumped out. I'm in a pair of jeans and dressed down, and my hair was a bit longer than it should have been as usual. And so I raced over and, you know, got a cordon happening and and raced up the set of stairs with my firearm in my hand. And there's a uniform sergeant standing there. And I said, right, where is this prick? And he's just gone, he's there, mate. He's right there. I'm going, fuck, look around, and I hear this voice that says, put the gun down or I'll fucking blow the joint up. And I looked in, and there was a guy sitting there, long hair, beard, overweight, rifle across his lap, and a box, turned out to be gelignite, a cardboard box in front of him, and some old army webbing, that Vietnam era army webbing. And I've looked in, I've gone, okay, no, you know, blah, 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 nothing silly. Who the fuck are you? I thought, well, gun, probably a copper, but anyway. So I've gone, produced my badge, and he just said, and I still don't know why. He said, put the gun down and come and talk to me. I don't know why. I gave my gun to Mel and took a couple of steps in and thought, Jesus Christ. There were 16 sticks of gelignite with 3 electronic dets wired in series. It was an IED. And I just got in there and I said, so, my name's Keith, what's your name? And and just made it up as I went along because I'm not a negotiator. And anyway, so what's in the box? He tossed me a half a stick of sweating gelignite, and you guys know what that is. And I remember thinking, you got to have a sense of humor about these things. I remember thinking, shit, because I'd been in the bomb squad, so I knew what was going on. And yeah, this is sweating gelignite. It can be set off by anything that bumps it, like, I don't know, dropping it on the floor. So,
Yeah,
so
stable.
yeah. So no, so I just sat with him. I broke a few rules. He wanted a 6-pack in return for the rifle, so you can't do that. So I broke a rule anyway and got a pot of beer brought in for him, and he was smoking over unstable gelignite. And anyway,
Just
so
don't fucking ash on it, mate.
so
Just
yeah.
stop. Yeah.
And I thought about doing the Bruce Willis thing, you know, and diving at him and pushing because he had the det wires bared, ready to go, and he had a 12-volt, you know, those Dolphin torch, big 12-volt batteries, on the floor beside him with the hand that never went away from the battery, and all it was positive, negative, gone. And I thought about diving over, then I thought, no, it's all unstable and that's stupid anyway, and fuck. So in essence, I sat with him for an hour and a half and talked him down and talked him out. Thank God. It's a chapter in the next book, though. See, shameless marketing. Shameless.
Are you going to make it? Are you going to go Audible with it, or are you going to?
Yeah. The guy who reads it actually is very. I'll plug for him. I don't know. Do any women watch this podcast?
Well, there's a couple of currents. So what's our audience segment, Keegs? He's our producer.
Yeah. Segment? So what I'm going to say, if you Google this guy's name, he's got like a 12,000 Instagram following and 98% of them are chicks.
Well, we definitely need that because we got 97% dudes that follow this podcast. And
maybe you can get him to sort of, you know, promote you or something. No, he's an Australian actor. He's a good guy. Joel Jackson. He did the Audible on the first one. And I actually met him coincidentally before the book was published. So, you know, I got him in, and, you know, he's a big, good-looking guy with an 8-pack, you know, the usual stuff. That's why he's got 10,000 female followers on Instagram, I suppose. But he did a cracker of a job. So, yeah, he'll do the same one again. Because now that I've got some success as an author, and this sounds wanky because it's still a new world to me, I can actually tell them who I want to do the Audible, and I sort of pushed the envelope last time, and I'm absolutely making sure that he does it this time because he does a great job.
Yeah, because I've got a couple. I got a subscription to Audible, and I think I can't listen to them enough. My trips to work, my commuting, because now I work from home. I used to commute to work.
Yeah.
That was my podcasting and audible listening time.
Yeah.
But now I work from home.
Yeah.
My ability to actually absorb the information is reduced, so my credits build up. But
Yeah.
you do get some amazing books that are narrated by robots, and you're like, fuck, I can't. This is a sick book, and I can't listen to this fucking dude. Man.
Yeah, I know, mate. Well, what happened was that they sent me, and again, a whole new world, right? They sent me two voiceover actors, reading parts of my first one, and it's like, oh, there we were, 3 against 1,000. Oh, fuck that off. And then some other guy's gone, well, the dangerous part of this, and I'm, oh, Jesus, no, this is bullshit. And I'd met Joel through my daughter, actually, because he was doing a lot of training on the Australian Ninja set. My daughter has a friend who was training on that. And anyway, she said, oh, why don't you get Joel? So Joel's got a bloody Logie Award. He won't want to do this. And she said, just text him and see how it goes. And if you guys ever have daughters, just do what they say, okay? So I texted him and just said, mate, we met a couple of years ago, got a book, you're interested in doing the Audible. He rang me straight away from Perth, and his first words were, fuck yeah.
And you're like, boom, there's your interview too. Like,
yeah. And he did, there's no bullshit. He just did a great job and read it really, really well. The characterizations, all that sort of stuff. So, and even though I knew what was going to happen at the end, I'm going, fuck, this is a good book. Highly, see, there you go. Highly endorse and recommend.
When's it coming out, mate?
Mate, I haven't got a definite date yet, but certainly July. Yep. I was literally proofreading today. I've got the manuscript and just proofreading through, and that then goes back to the publisher. It's gone to the lawyers, and the lawyers have said this, and I've gone, yeah, okay. Boring bastards. So July sometime. I would hope maybe mid-July, but I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, definitely.
Now I've got your details and stuff.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Did you get much redacted out of it because of, undercover work or anything like that?
No, the first one, mate, I not redacted so much as I changed a lot of things. I changed names. I changed operation names. But what I bloody should have put in my author's note, and I didn't, was that the conversations were all as they were. Because I actually, when I moved house a few years ago, I found a cardboard box with all my undercover notebooks that I'd kept. So as I'm writing the book, I had my notebook beside me going, right, I've called this person X, and their real name is J, but fuck me, that's the conversation. So I literally was, doing all that. So it's as it happened. And it's the interesting thing about writing. If someone's dead, you can say what you like because the laws of defamation don't apply. And as my publisher I dealt with, I spoke with her a couple of days ago, and she said, "Oh, we love dead people," and now I understand why. But if there was stuff I wrote about that's actually in the media and historically accurate, that's all cool too. I wrote about a guy that I was buying drugs from who wanted to knock me later on. I thought we were mates. And I've used his real name because he actually, went back to jail. He was an escapee from a jail in South Australia for a double murder. So that's, you can use that where it's all quite, on the public record, I guess. But where I'd wanted to write about corrupt bastards, I couldn't use their names, unfortunately. But I'm sure if they read the book, they'll know who they are.
That's all that matters.
That's what matters, mate. That's right.
Read between the lines. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
What about personal relationships, mate? Was this something that, I mean, I know, like, young, hang about, like, banging around and that, but when you got a serious relationship, you're like, I've got to go undercover. I mean, can you tell them?
No, I didn't have one. Didn't have one, mate. No. I was pretty keen on my hairdresser for a couple of years, and I told her I was a bloody failed law student or something, and I'd go in there every few months to get my hair cut and whatever, and I was pretty keen on her. But the day I started back in uniform, I literally went in that morning, got an early appointment, got all my hair cut off, and I had my uniform pants on and a tracksuit top over my uniform shirt. And she said, "Why are you getting your hair cut?" And I said, blah, 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 lied to you for a couple of years. I'm a copper. Here's my uniform, thinking she'd go, "Oh, that's so wonderful." No, she didn't speak to me again, ever.
She was a crib.
So that was a bit harsh. But no, you just didn't have relate. You just couldn't. And as my mate Ando famously said to me about day 2 of my undercover stuff, he said something like, "Listen, mate, if you've got a girlfriend, fuck her off, because you're going to be all over the state. You're going to meet a lot of honeys in this job. Don't fuck any targets, but you're going to meet a lot of other honeys, and so take my advice. So I went, okay, it works. I didn't put that in that certain parts in the book though, and I went to a mate's send off in Brisbane a few weeks ago. I happened to be up there, and a great guy's retiring, and he said, "So Banksy's here, and I've just got to say about his book. He led an R-rated life and wrote a G-rated book. What the fuck's that about?" But sorry, mate. No, you just couldn't do it. And in fact, I was training in a Korea in Taekwondo. Call it a dojo. And I went to my chief instructor and said, look, told him, so I'm going to go undercover, but I have to tell other people in the club that I've been sacked, that I've been found with some drugs in my locker and I've been fired. So they actually believed that I was a disgraced copper for, at least 18, 19 months, my first stint, until I went back and just said, no, I've actually been telling you fibs as well. They took it much better than the hairdresser.
And they would love the action.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I'll tell us some stories,
Mate, is there relationships that you form with dudes you've put away that you were like, oh, I really like this guy, but or have you? Is there relationships you've continued now with dudes that you met, or is there anyone that's sort of
no, not undercover, but there was one guy that I didn't want to buy from because he was a great guy, really good bloke, and all he was doing was selling. Okay, it was a lot of weed, but it was just weed, and I really liked him, and he kept making me offer after offer after offer because my cover was I was a heroin dealer, even though I was only 22, 23 or something. I had nice flashy clothes, and that's what you did. You dressed, and I could talk the talk, and I was pretty confident in the world, and so on. And he was trying to do me a favour because, oh, come on, mate, I've got 100 of these sticks that have come in from Thailand. They're fucking excellent. You make a lot of money. No, it's okay. Anyway, put me in a position one day where I just couldn't refuse. It was just too much, and I just went, okay, bugger. When the operation finished, in those days, we were blown. So our identity was disclosed after every operation. Again, Wild West shit. So, and the target when they were arrested was given the opportunity to have the undercover confront them because they'd all go bullshit and bring the undercover in and go, I knew you were a narc. Yeah, well, that's sure you did. But the detective said to him, do you want to have a confrontation? He said, not a formal one. I just want to say good day. And I walked in and he said, mate, now I get it. Fuck, now I get it. I said, well, I tried. He found me a couple of years later when I'd gone back to the drug squad as a detective, left a message at the drug squad to have a catch up. And I thought, right, there's a couple of options here. Either he's going to want some payback or maybe he wants to roll over and work for me. Who the hell knows? But all it wanted was he just wanted to have a beer and say good day. And
he took that pretty well.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Strangely, although I did go there with a gun and a couple of backup mates. But
and he might have been high. So.
That's right. But I have got a mate in Victoria, and I never kept in those relationships. So probably because I was so fucked up with PTSD from that 89, 87 onwards, I was really emotionally distant a lot of the time. But I have a mate in Victoria in the SOG, the Special Operations Group down here, who shall remain nameless, but was involved in a situation some years ago. There was an armed hold-up occurring. He shot, the bad guys all got killed except for one. My mate shot him. Shit shot, apparently. And they catch up every 6 months and have a beer. It's very cool. And they laugh about the day. Oh, remember when? Oh, we laughed and we laughed. But he said, they just have a chat. There's a whole book right there, I reckon.
There's black and white, and then there's the grey area where we live. Hey?
Yeah.
We all just bond over a beer.
Yeah, that's right. That's what he says. He said, it's just, it just happened, but, he's not a bad bloke.
Good bloke, shit spot, mate. Learning to deal with all this sort of stuff, is there stuff that you learn yourself prior to, like, tools and techniques? So, I mean, Swiss 8's about learning proactive stuff to teach people these tools before they have situations so that they can identify what's going on, so that they can maybe learn to live a life that's okay. I mean, it's different if you have to be a fucking undercover and you whatever it is, but is there things that you have learned that has helped you perform better, or you know that these are the things to do,
Yeah,
like sleep, etc.?
mate. Number one, talk to your mates and talk to people. Number one, if I'd had the opportunity to talk openly back in those days, I would have recovered a lot earlier than I did. Um, the culture was just to shut. Well, the culture was to shut up, but it was because no one really knew how to handle it. So talk to your mates, talk to every chance I get on every, and I've done a number of podcasts, as you know, every chance I get, I say anybody who's listening to this out there who's got issues, you're not by yourself. You're not alone at all. Talk to your mates. Find me through social media, and I've had some people do that, which is pretty damn cool. And the second is, for me, be kind to yourself. Yeah, you're actually, you have an injury. It's not a mental disorder, even though it's called disorder. It's more, for me, it's an injury. It's completely normal to react like this to stress and trauma that you've been through. You don't necessarily have to be a cop or a soldier to go through it. You can have trauma in your life that can fuck you up. Um, so, and be aware of that. Be kind to yourself. The third thing I do, mate, I exercise almost every day to get the endorphins happening. I went back to martial arts at the age of 53. Train in a dojo 3 times a week. I do boxing rounds, every other day. I go for a run. I'm not crazy obsessive, although it seems like it, but even if it's 30 minutes, sometimes better than that. But just to be, for me, to release those endorphins, I think has an incredibly powerful and positive effect. And using every opportunity for me to try and encourage other people to talk. So I'm at the stage now where I can sort of pick it, I reckon. I get a vibe from someone and go, no, that's not good. And I'll do whatever I can to help them. That for me is pay it forward, because a lot of people have helped me since, I guess, the attitudes in society have changed about mental health. It used to be a real stigma, as you know, and now, with everything that's happened over the last 10 and 15, or Jesus, since 2001, so fuck 20 years, one of the positives has been that we've been able to talk more openly, and also, I still get on the sauce way too much. I reckon I still love a drink. It's hard for me to break that, particularly when I'm with my mates. Because that's when we actually, we're like, I'm on the wrong side of 60. So my mates are same, or generally, or some are in their 50s. But we actually get to have a beer now, and the first thing we do when we see each other is hug. We never used to hug. You'd hug, you kiss your mate on the cheek and say, I fucking miss you, brother, I love you. And all of that is incredibly powerful, because as men, we don't generally open our emotions up, and that's a problem, because you internalize it, then it all just goes, blows up one day, and either you die or something, other tragic things happen where you may take another course of action. So for me, it's about being as authentic as you can, realizing that, yeah, we're tough guys, fuck yeah, we're alpha males, but we're also still human beings, and we've got an injury that's not of our making. Yeah. And people talk to me about antidepressants. I go, well, yeah, hey, if your doctor says do it, then fucking do it. Because if you had diabetes or high blood pressure, you'd take a pill, wouldn't you? Yeah, I would. Same, mate. Depression is not a conscious choice. It's the fact your synapses aren't working properly. And if you get something to level you out so you can actually feel joy again, what's the bad thing about that? So, yeah, I answered your question a number of levels.
Absolutely, we have to clip that up, mate. I think the alcohol one's the big one. I think that's something that even at our level, mate. When we're not choir boys, as we say, absolutely not. We teach healthy sort of lifestyles, but still human fucking beings. I still catch up with the boys, and that you catch up and you have you have enough where you get the emotional juices flowing and the social lubricant, right? And you have a fucking laugh, and then. It's just, where do you pull it up, right?
Yeah, that's the challenge, that's the challenge. It's because that last 4 hours between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. go like that, don't they? It's a really hard one, mate, because I still thrive on the camaraderie, and I still thrive on that that having a beer, and I know you can have fun without it, blah blah, but it's just it's probably ingrained in me by now. I did drink way too much for years. I realised it was self-medicating, but I don't self-medicate now. I drink to enjoy it with my mates, you know. And if you get a little bit pissed, then you get a little bit pissed. Big deal. It's you know, you're right. You don't still want to be out at 4 a.m. staggering through the streets looking for a cab. That's where you need to press the stop button before
Mate,
then.
I've been trying to do the Cinderella rule for years. I'm trying to get it out. Like if it's past 12, get in a bloody pumpkin because yeah, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah. Yeah, well, when you can figure it out, can you
yeah,
let me
we'll
know?
see.
Because I'd appreciate it. But that's I think that's yeah, it's a fine line between having a good time and relying on it. Yeah, yeah. And if you're drinking for effect and you're drinking to sleep, then that's probably not a good place to be. But I sort of get it, you know.
As opposed to some of the other alternatives, you're like, fuck. Well, it's a lesser of two evils, eh?
Oh yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, yeah. And in fact, I have a whole position around weed. I'd like to see weed legalized because I never went to any domestic disputes or brawls where people were stoned.
And that's from
So
experience, right? That's
break.
experience, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Exactly right. Yeah, I could go on about that for hours too. Legalize it for fuck's sake. We lost the war a long time ago. Break the back of organized crime involvement in it, tax it, control the quality, and what you'll see actually is usage will go down because it loses its outlaw image. And those people who prefer to have a spliff than a vodka, happy days. So
I think alcohol is probably one of the biggest problems. You see, I've got a couple of ambo mates and a couple of cop mates as well, and they're like, it is responding to alcohol-related incidents,
yeah,
like
yep,
alcohol and drugs, but never weed generally. Like,
yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. The biggest argument you have when you're smoking weed is who's got the remote control, and I want to watch this versus Pink
Yeah,
Floyd. For fuck's sake, we watched that
it's
last night.
not much of a
Um,
colourful argument either.
because what have they done? They've done it in
that's
Canberra,
right.
haven't they? They've done. It's legal in Canberra
Um,
locally.
State state law says that you can have it, but they're
yeah,
run by the Fed, so it wouldn't really.
yeah, yeah, oh, yeah. But any cop is not really going to worry about it, one would hope. But there are, I think at the moment, 12 states in the US where it's completely legal for recreational use. And I follow the stats a lot because it really interests me. And Colorado were the first state to do it, was the first state to do it. And the latest stats I've seen in Colorado since they introduced legal weeds, maybe 5 years ago or maybe more, is that street violence has dropped by 47% alone. You know, the tax, the first year they legalized weed, they forecast a tax take of 60 million. They got it in 3 months. And then, yeah, and the first year, all the tax intake from weed went to health and education. The second year, it went to cops to fight the ICE scourge. Then the third year again was health and education. So it just all makes sense to me, you know. Um, will you guys, your generation, hurry up and do it before I die? Because it'd just be kind of
We're
cool.
getting there. We're trying. I mean, it is, isn't it? There's a difference between marijuana and if you have drug education. I think that's massively important. If you teach people,
Yeah,
educate
absolutely.
people on drugs like alcohol, marijuana, what it does. Um, I don't
Yep,
think I can ever
yep,
condone ice, heroin. Those things are addictive and destructive and destroy lives.
that's right.
And that's something.
I've seen too many people go, yeah, sorry to interrupt, mate. I've seen too many lives ruined by all that shit. But
But talk to the cops that know, mate. Eh?
that's exactly right, mate. Yeah, yeah. And I think the average cop would go, absolutely legalize it so I can get on with my
Yep.
job, rather than worry about someone having a spliff in the street, whatever. So,
Do you have much to do with so Peter Dutton's swapped across currently to the defence
yeah,
minister.
yeah,
We had
yeah.
a beer and a barbecue with him when we were down in Canberra for the barbecue to remember. Um,
Oh, cool.
what do you
Yep.
reckon? What do you think? What do you think, old Duts?
Dado, I knew him when I knew him when he was in the drug squad. It's a shame we didn't know each other because if you'd said Banksy said good day, he'd go, shit, how do you know Banksy? Um, Yeah, he's a good guy. He gets bad press. And a lot of the 24-hour fucking news cycle now is if you don't look like Robert Redford or Brad Pitt or whatever, the media focuses on your head. So, it gets all and look, nice guy, but not very
That's
photogenic.
what he said,
Um,
mate. I hit him up. We had a
um,
beer, and I said, "Oh, how do you like being the second most hated bloke in Australia?" And he's like, "Second." I'm first, mate. Like he was the Home Affairs Minister or whatever it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, mate, well, because I personally know him, so I can't be objective, but I know that he's a genuine bloke. He's just a genuine bloke, and the media in this country love to tear people to pieces, as you know, and it's almost as if they just don't give him a break because he's done it. Hey, deports people from the country who are organised crooks will get my vote every day of the week. But and I just hope the silent majority understand that. But if you ever run into him again, mate, Joe, give him my regards because I haven't seen him for a
while. I'm catching up with him this afternoon. We're going to have a beer. So he's up in Townsville at the moment. So by the time this comes out, it's not illegal to disclose his location. But so we're going to catch up with up there with the federal member for Townsville going out.
Oh right, well, tell him Banksy said hello. Good as gold,
mate. All right, well, mate, we might leave it there. But can you? Just drop you got Instagram, social media stuff, and then the title of your book.
I have,
Let's
mate.
Get that out there so we can clip that up and get it to everybody, mate.
Oh, thanks, brother. I'll just send it off to Anthony.
Yeah, and then if you just want to drop it now, and then we'll just clip this out as a piece, mate. So
good as gold, yeah.
Handles.
Cheers.
Lovely.
Rattle off.
I've got all the Instagram. I've got all the Instagram links and stuff like that. So I'll pop them up at the end on the screens.
Oh, so you're all over it, Keegan. So, mate, I don't use Twitter a lot for it, but the Insta stuff I do. I've got a Facebook. Facebook clearly. Drugs, Guns and Lies is the Facebook site, or my Facebook is just Keith Banks. It's open, and a website that I've got that's being overhauled, and actually will be overhauled by the time you guys go to air. So when is this? Couple of weeks?
Monday.
This one? Oh, Monday. Ooh, nice work. All right, may not be overhauled by then, but it's worth throwing up there because it'll be pretty cool when it's finished in a couple of weeks. So that's just www.keithbanks.com.au. I put seconds of thought into it.
No, it's good. Well, it's like Giorgio Armani and all those other self-titled brand names. It's Keith Banks. That's going to be the brand name, mate.
Well, yeah, that's it. There you go. Banksy, I think Banksy175 is my Insta, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So, mate, both sides, mate, sir. Great having a chat to you. Thank you very much. So you're in Townsville, Max. Where are you, Keegan?
I'm over in Perth.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. So split up a bit.
Well, good to chat to you guys. Thank you very much.
We'll have to get you back on in the future if you're ever keen to. I might try and get you back on.
Oh yeah.
When the book comes out, or just
Yeah, no, love to, mate. Yeah, because look, I've got to say the second one's much darker than the first. I've written really openly about what we talked about this afternoon. I'd love to have a chat. Besides, I like talking to fellow like-minded people.
Experienced lads, mate.
Absolutely,
Cheers,
got it.
Mate. Hey, thanks very much, brother. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, brother. My pleasure. Take care, guys.